Hi, I'm Reed, this is Crowland Publishing. We're a narrative gaming channel. We put the emphasis on getting the best drama and storylines and narratives out of our TTRPG. And this is another one in our series of lore, of using folklore, social custom, religion, mythology, history, all that cool stuff, and steal it from the real world for our TTRPGs. And today we're going to talk about a very, very cool and very, very well-known and very old piece of folklore, the Wild Hunt. Let's begin. So the Wild Hunt myth itself is very, very simple. A hunter with a pack of animals, clearly supernatural, race through the world, terrifying people. Sometimes the hunt flies, sometimes it's one person with just a hunting pack, but they're always given the attributes of being wild and insane. Call it raving, and they're a bad, bad omen. And people experience them in the same terms as what we might talk about UFOs today. It was in a forest, it was an eerie light, I saw it, it was the hunt. So there's dozens and hundreds even versions of the myth. They all have their own names, they vary from region to region, but the Brothers Grimm, actually the folklorists, actually unite them and give them the name the Wild Hunt. So I'm going to pick 5 wild hunts that I like and get 5 adventure hooks out of them, so get ready. Perhaps the best known and probably the most iconic is that of the German wild hunt, Wotan's Hare, as they call it. And there, the god Odin, or Wotan as he was known regionally, is on a sled led by or pulled by dogs, or sometimes it's magical wolves, or sometimes it's horses with 4 to 8 different legs, which Odin fans will recognize as Odin's weird horse Sleipnir, which I've probably said wrong. I've actually got one source that suggests that werewolves are pulling the chariot of Odin. Now, Odin goes across the sky often, sometimes just through the woods, and he hunts evildoers, he hunts evil people, especially poachers. But there's also myths that Odin is looking for a great dragon to destroy, so that's pretty cool. But this is important. The Wild Hunt in Germany is always described as being wild as in insane. It's not safe to be near it. It's a dangerous, dangerous thing. The animals are not tame. And of course, Odin fans will understand that one of his attributes, his chief attributes, is that he's the god of the berserker rage. So even just in one particular Wild Hunt, we've got so many different variations of it. And even then, sometimes Wotan isn't riding the horses through the sky. It's an undead lord who's being punished to ride out from the lands of the dead to hunt immortals. Sometimes it's not even the undead lord. Sometimes it's just a figure that we know as the lone hunter, who is an assassin of evil men. But that iconic image of the horses flying across the sky in the night, looking for something, evil men, dragons, whatever, that's a Wotan. That's the Wotan's Hare version of the Wild Hunt. Number 2, the Fairy Cavalcade, probably the second best known version of the Wild Hunt stories. Now, like a lot of fairy tale stuff and a lot of Celtic stuff, the original cavalcade seems to be based on a myth of a god riding out of the land of promise, out of heaven, and with him came his fellow gods, and if anyone who saw them went insane from the beauty and the majesty. But that's not really a part of it anymore. That's been forgotten and put by the wayside. And ultimately, the Fairy Cavalcade is that sometimes on certain nights of the year, the myth goes that the fairy hosts ride out. And very, very commonly, this seems to be an explanation for gusts of wind, sudden gales, even storms. That's the wind that's blowing past from as the fairy host rides. And to quote one source, they were in the habit of lifting men in southeast, for the hosts need men to help in shooting their javelins from the bows against women in the action of milking cows, or against any person working at night in a house over which they pass. And I have heard of good sensible men whom the host took, shooting a horse or a cow in place of the person ordered to be shot. So there you go. The actual original myth is that they are looking to steal men to help them shoot women with arrows, and also horses and cows, and also anyone working at night. Totes. But there's also Aaron, or Gwyn, who's a Celtic death god. Aaron isn't necessarily evil, but he's a dark and sinister figure. And he would often ride across the land with and the exact word is the throng of the dead, of any kind. Fallen heroes, children, criminals, he didn't care. Die while he's out and he will grab you and put you into his train. And they will howl and scream together as he drags them through the air. Later on, the myths chuck out Aaron altogether, the poor bugger, and it's just remembered the Wild Hunt just becomes this massive screaming ghost flying through the air, which is, again, a pretty cool image. Number 3, Dando's Dandy Devil Dogs. I like this English one. I like it as it flips it. Dando is a hunter, and he goes to the pub one day, and he tells his dogs, wait outside. And he goes to the bartender, I don't care if you have to go to hell, just go and get me a drink. And you've got to remember that this is the olden times. Talking about hell casually just isn't done, because it can hear you if you talk about hell too much. So he says that, he goes, give me a drink. And then there's a knock on the door and they open it, and it's a weird hunter. And the hunter walks in and he says to Dando, I've got a drink for you. Do you want it? Dando goes, yep, sure, mate. Glug, glug, glug. Oh my God, it's delicious. I'd go to hell for more of this drink. And then the devil, because it's obviously the devil. Come on, it's folktale. It's always the devil. The devil hunter grabs him and drags him down to hell. Sad trombone sound. But Dando's dogs decide that they're going to go and help him. And so now they're running around through the fields of England looking for an entrance to hell to find Dando and presumably free him. Good dogs! Good dogs. I like dogs. And of course, aficionados of English folklore will understand that black dogs and hunting dogs are a common motif, and they're a long-standing influence on D&D monsters. Number 4 is Gudrun. Man, Gudrun, very complex literary and mythological figure. Deeply outside our ability to talk about here, but really, really quickly. She is married to Siegfried, who is a perfect knight type. And the perfect knight is the star of the Ring Cycle by Wagner. Now, Siegfried has magical gold that the Burgundians, a rival nation, want. So they send assassins to kill Siegfried. And so they get him, they murder him. And Gudrun is then married off to their political allies, basically Attila the Hun. So in the Norse tradition, Attila desires the hoard of gold that Siegfried had. But the Burgundians have taken it, and so there's a double cross. But however, Gudrun hates everyone. She hates Attila and she hates the Burgundians. So what happens is that she waits until there is a big meeting between these two unfriendly adversaries, and then she sets the hall on fire and burns them all to death. Baller. However, the story doesn't end. Somewhere along the line, Gudrun becomes a leader of the Wild Hunt. One of the very few female leaders of the Wild Hunt that we see. There's an Italian one, but she's more played for comedy. But Gudrun is a banshee. Gudrun is unequivocally a terrifying ghost monster entity who is out to kill people. She is always seen as evil. And if you are Burgundian, if you are a Hun, and she finds you, she will drag you down to hell. So not only is she one of the only female leaders of the Wild Hunt, she's also one of the examples of where the Wild Hunt is terrifying and malevolent. Number 5, the Harlequin. Now I wanted to do this weird Spanish story who's about a count who rides around with his horse on fire as a punishment for nun molesting, but I should include Harlequin. In early medieval Italy, there was a wild hunter figure called Harlequin. He was probably the folk history of a king called Hurla. Harlequin is a giant. His face is black, and he walks around with a huge club, and he has a host of demons behind him. And originally he was seen as hunting a monk along a beach. That was the very, very first story of Harlequin. But eventually his story grows, and Harlequin is there with his demons to drag damned souls back to hell, which is pretty good of them, I suppose. But Harlequin enters public consciousness in the medieval Italy as a kind of stock figure in plays. Every time you had an ogre or a monster or even a bad person, you would just call him Harlequin. I've done a video on actually how you can learn from these interesting medieval plays for your D&D. And the first time that we see Harlequin, he's actually this hooded, sinister devil figure, but he ends up as this buffoonish, literal clown. And so what happens is that as the plays become more sophisticated, Harlequin goes from being the evil supernatural villain to being the clownish, buffoonish Harlequin. And that is the supernatural history of all clowns. There you go. They were once part of the Wild Hunt. Now, let's get 5 adventure hooks out of all of this. Number 1. Well, with the Harlequin, there is a classic plot that always comes to mind when it comes to the theatre, and I think that more people should take advantage of it, to tell you the truth. The actors put on the masks of stock characters, including the dreadful demonic Harlequin, and they are possessed by the spirits that these things represent. So suddenly, your city has a pagan devil and his hellspawns on the loose, and you can't kill them, or the hosts, who are just innocent actors, they die. So, always a bit of fun there. Number 2. A ghostly figure, a royal, cannot forgive the current bloodline for the sins of their ancestors. So, your patron, your PC's patron, who's a friendly duchess or baroness, finds herself under assault from this wild hunt, this ghost-led wild hunt, and her shrieking undead army that flies through the night. And the ghost, she cannot stop. She will never stop until she has her revenge. Or maybe one of the bloodline seeks forgiveness. So you can either have this rather nice storyline of the adventurers trying to reconcile a ghost, or you can just have them trying to fight off a ghost army that flies through the air. Either way, it's cool. Number 3. Someone hires the PCs to see off the devil hounds that are haunting the hills and are scaring everyone and scaring the chickens and all that sort of business. That's the sort of thing that PCs do. So they go up, they find the devil dogs, but they realize that the dogs don't want to fight. The dogs haven't actually hurt anybody. Maybe they've even helped out. Maybe they've even killed an ogre or a goblin or something. And hopefully the PCs will realize that they are not looking to cause a problem, and in fact, that they are hunting something down. Let's take the story of Dando. Are the PCs ready to step into hell and save an innocent man damned beyond his fault, and all for no money at all? Well, let's see. Number 4. The Fairy Cavalcade rides, and those who see it fall to madness at the beauty of the sight. They throw down their arms to become painters and singers. They reject God and take up paganism, and everyone's a lesbian and a feminist, and wherever the cavalcade rides, something tumultuous happens. Madness is spreading. Social cohesion is breaking down. Wherever anyone sees the Wild Hunt, the Fairy Cavalcade, their minds are not right anymore. So the PCs are hired to stop them, but martial arts is not going to do the job here. Bit of biffo is not going to do the job. They need to find out why the fairies have ridden out to hunt. Now, usually in these tales, they like to take children to raise them and send them back as changelings. They like to take lovers back to fairyland. But there's also a little bit of folklore to suggest that fairy and hell are at war. That's interesting. And number 5, what does a god hunt? Well, the players are going to find out. God or an avatar of a god or for a powerful spirit or whatever wild and dangerous is after truly dire prey, and he needs the PC's help. Now, maybe you can run it as the PCs help track a vicious dragon down for this wild, kind one, Artemis-style goddess. Maybe it's something really quite tough, like a Death Knight or a rock. But the one time I've used this kind of plot, I actually gave the PCs powers. They were transformed. I can't remember. I think they were transformed into Valkyries, but you could do it into angels or whatever. And for one session, they had superpowers. And so they rode with the gods and they fought a Death Titan or a 100-handed or a Death Lord or a Demon Lord, something like that. Something very, very powerful. And they hunted with the gods for a one-off session. It was pretty cool. So there you have it. 5 different versions of the Wild Hunt. 5 different adventure seeds. I hope you enjoyed this video. Why don't you give us a like and a share and a blah, you know how it all goes. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.